Right now, as you watch this video, more than 300 missiles in under 18 minutes launched across 3 separate vectors forced one of the most advanced air defense systems on Earth into something it was never designed for. Choice, not failure, not malfunction, but saturation. At exactly 02:17 a.m. local time, multiple radar systems lit up simultaneously. At 02:19, interception batteries began firing. By 02:26, according to early reports cited by Reuters and Al Jazeera, interception rates began to drop below 60% in specific sectors. And by 02:31, something happened that military planners have quietly warned about for years. The system hesitated. Silence. Not the silence of peace. The silence between incoming waves. Because this was never about a single strike, it was about overwhelming the logic of defense itself. For decades, systems like these were described as shields, impenetrable, layered, intelligent. But what happens when the threat is not precision, but volume? What happens when the sky itself becomes the weapon? And more importantly, what does it mean for every other nation on Earth that relies on the same assumption? Because if what we are seeing is real, then this is not just a regional escalation. It is a blueprint, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Here is the central truth, and it is deeply uncomfortable. Israel's defense system is not failing because it is weak. It is failing because it was designed for precision threats, not infinite volume. That is the difference. And that difference changes everything. Because what we are witnessing right now is not just a military exchange. It is a stress test of a concept, the idea that technology can create perfect security. And in the next few minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly how this barrage was structured to exploit that assumption, and more importantly, the 2 paths this conflict now opens, one that leads to containment and one that leads to something far more dangerous and irreversible. We are also going to break down the specific systems involved, the exact cost dynamics behind each interception, and why this model, if replicated, could reshape modern warfare far beyond this region. If you are not already subscribed, now is the moment to do it and turn on notifications, because the next 48 to 72 hours of this story are going to move fast, and you cannot afford to be behind on something that is already changing the rules in real time. This is not noise. This is signal. Let us go back to April 13th, 2024, 01:58 a.m. Tel Aviv time. The city was quiet, not tense, not bracing, just quiet. Cafes had closed hours earlier. Traffic had thinned to a low mechanical hum. Apartment lights flickered off one by one. On the surface, nothing unusual. No sirens, no warnings, no visible threat. But far beyond the skyline, across 2,500 kilometers of distance, something had already begun. Inside hardened facilities, launch crews were moving with mechanical precision, coordinates locked, fuel systems primed, guidance packages verified. No speeches, no noise, just procedure. Engines off, weapons loaded, waiting. This did not start that night. The dry timber had been stacking for years. According to Pentagon budget reports, Israel's layered missile defense, including systems like Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow, has received over $3.4 billion in U.S. funding since 2011. Each Iron Dome interceptor costs between $40,000 and $100,000, based on figures cited by Congressional Research Service and Raytheon disclosures. Now place that against the other side. According to Reuters and CSIS, Center for Strategic and International Studies, many short-range ballistic and drone systems used in regional arsenals can be produced for as little as $3,000 to $20,000 per unit. Stop. Read that again. A system designed to stop everything, facing something designed to be cheap, repeatable, and numerous. This is not just a battlefield. It is an economic equation, a circulatory system under stress, where every interception is like a heartbeat, and the pulses are coming faster than the body can sustain. And then at 02:17 a.m., the first wave appeared on radar. Not 1, not 10, hundreds received. Revelation number 1. This was not a missile strike. It was a systematic saturation campaign engineered to break the mathematics of defense. According to early reporting from Reuters, BBC, and Al Jazeera, the barrage combined ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and long-range drones, launched in staggered timing across multiple trajectories. The goal was not accuracy. The goal was compression, forcing detection, tracking, and interception systems to process more targets than they were physically designed to handle at once, and this is where the scale becomes almost difficult to grasp. Israel's Iron Dome batteries are highly effective, with reported interception rates often above 85% to 90%, according to the Israeli Ministry of Defense and U.S. Pentagon briefings. But those numbers assume manageable volumes, controlled scenarios, predictable bursts. This was neither. A single Tamir interceptor missile used by Iron Dome costs up to $100,000. Some estimates go higher, depending on configuration. Now compare that to incoming drones reportedly costing under $10,000. Dollar for dollar, this becomes brutal. $100,000 defending against $10,000. Repeat that across hundreds of incoming targets. Re-listen to that. That is not a tactical imbalance. That is a strategic pressure point. Now add the second layer. According to CNN and the New York Times, higher altitude threats triggered systems like David Sling and Arrow 2-3, each interceptor costing anywhere from $700,000 to over $3 million per launch, based on estimates from Lockheed Martin and Israeli defense disclosures. One wave, multiple layers, each layer more expensive than the last. And here is the critical part. The part almost nobody is saying clearly. Even if you intercept 90%, the remaining 10% still gets through. His words, not mine. As one former Pentagon missile defense analyst told Reuters, no system is designed for infinite saturation. At some point, volume wins. Volume wins. That is revelation number 1, and we are just getting started. Revelation number 2, and this one nobody saw coming. At 02:24 a.m., in a residential neighborhood just outside Tel Aviv, the streetlights were still on, a soft yellow glow, balconies lined with potted plants, laundry left out overnight. Inside one apartment, 7-year-old Noah Levy had fallen asleep on a couch, still wearing her school uniform from the day before. Her mother had left the television on at low volume, morning cartoons cued for when she woke up. Normal life, ordinary life, the kind that assumes the night will pass quietly. Then the sirens, not one, not distant, but layered, overlapping, echoing through concrete corridors and narrow stairwells. According to BBC and CNN field reports, families had less than 90 seconds in some districts to reach shelter after alerts were triggered. 90 seconds. And here is where the system reveals its limit, because even when interception rates hold, the fragments, the debris of destroyed missiles, still fall, burning. Unpredictable. According to Israel's Home Front Command, cited by the New York Times, secondary impacts from intercepted threats caused structural damage across multiple civilian areas during the barrage. Let that land. This is the part the mainstream framing often misses. The system did not simply hold or fail. It transferred risk from impact zones to everywhere else. Now consider the language used in initial briefings. Officials said interceptions were largely successful. They did not say no damage occurred. They did not say no civilians were affected. That was not an accident, because according to Al Jazeera and Reuters, emergency services reported dozens of injuries, many from shrapnel and falling debris rather than direct hits. The narrative held, but the reality underneath it was already shifting. And here is the question that sits underneath all of this. If a system protects you, but still allows the sky to fall around you, what exactly has been secured? Revelation number 3, and this one is about what is happening to the institution itself, because systems do not break in isolation. They reveal what was already strained underneath. Here is the list. Multiple reserve units activated within minutes, according to IDF statements cited by Reuters. Air defense batteries redeployed mid-engagement, reported by CNN military analysts. Emergency protocols upgraded from localized to national level in under 20 minutes, per BBC coverage. Civilian alert systems experiencing staggered delays in certain districts, confirmed by Israel Home Front Command updates. Airspace temporarily restricted across multiple corridors, according to FAA and Israeli aviation notices. International carriers suspending flights within hours, reported by the New York Times. No commentary, just facts. Now place those side by side. A system designed for layered certainty, forced into real-time improvisation, and here is where timing matters. According to public records cited by Haaretz and Reuters, senior defense officials had spent the weeks prior engaged in strategic briefings and diplomatic coordination, not active large-scale live-fire stress tests of full-spectrum saturation scenarios. That is not a criticism. That is a structural reality. And then the test came anyway. That is not a punchline. That is a documented fact. Now connect this back. Revelation 1 showed the mathematical strain, cost versus volume. Revelation 2 showed the human spillover, protection versus unpredictability. This is the system-level layer. When demand exceeds design, institutions stop executing and start managing failure. Say that again. They stop executing. They start managing failure. That is not how you win wars. That is how you lose them. And here is the final piece. These were not incompetent actors. They were not disloyal. They were not negligent. They were operating exactly as trained, within a system that had reached its limit. These were not people failing the institution. They were loyal to the institution, and that is the thing that got them overwhelmed. Now let us talk about the strategic logic Iran is applying and why it is fundamentally different from conventional warfare doctrine. This is not about breaking a single defensive layer. It is about forcing continuous decision overload, where every radar cycle, every interception launch, every second of calculation becomes part of the weapon itself. In simple terms, defense is not being penetrated. It is being outpaced. History has seen this logic before. During the Battle of Britain in World War II, the objective was not just to destroy aircraft. It was to overwhelm response capacity faster than it could adapt. In modern naval warfare, similar principles emerged in U-boat campaign strategies, where volume and dispersion created systemic strain rather than decisive battles. This is the same pattern, but compressed into minutes instead of months. Now expand outward. The United States is watching this as a validation test of its missile defense doctrine. Israel is experiencing it in real time as operational reality. Iran is demonstrating capability, signaling not through accuracy, but through sustainability of scale. And then there is Europe. Silence is the most revealing element, because while official statements from NATO capitals remain measured, the absence of immediate doctrinal response updates is itself data. Silence here is not neutrality. It is assessment in progress. China, meanwhile, is observing something even more specific, cost asymmetry at industrial scale, not just missiles, but economics of endurance. Now apply compound collapse theory. Each additional wave increases interception cost. Each interception increases logistical strain. Each strain increases the probability of delayed response. Each delay increases vulnerability to the next wave. That is the loop, and it feeds itself. If you are watching this closely, take a moment to like the video and share it, because understanding this shift is no longer just geopolitical curiosity. It is literacy in how modern conflict actually functions. And right now, the actors who might de-escalate this cycle are calculating, and the system that triggered it is still operating at full tempo, undisturbed, watching. Now let us talk about what this means for you personally, because this is where the story stops being about missiles, militaries, and governments, and starts becoming about everyday life. When escalation like this enters the system, it does not stay contained to one region. It moves through energy markets first. Brent crude futures typically react within hours to major Middle East military escalations, and even a $5–10 per barrel spike can translate into immediate fuel price adjustments worldwide. In many import-dependent economies, that shift shows up at the pump within days, not weeks. That is not a forecast. That is already in your wallet. Then comes shipping. The Middle East corridor, especially routes tied to the Strait of Hormuz, handles roughly 20% of global oil transit, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, EIA. Even perceived instability in this corridor raises insurance premiums for shipping fleets. Those costs do not stay in corporate balance sheets. They move downstream into retail pricing, grocery bills, electricity costs, transportation fares, and there is a second layer most people miss. Global supply chains are now tied to real-time logistics algorithms. AI-driven distribution systems used by companies like Amazon-style fulfillment networks and industrial manufacturers reroute based on risk signals. A spike in geopolitical volatility triggers automatic reallocation of shipping and storage routes, increasing latency and costs simultaneously. Even data infrastructure is not insulated. Large-scale cloud and AI data centers depend on stable energy pricing. When energy volatility rises, operational costs for digital infrastructure increase, quietly, invisibly, but consistently. This is the key point. The system is not separate anymore. The oil market, the shipping lanes, the food supply chain, and even digital infrastructure are downstream from the same instability. And the missile barrage did not create that dependency. It just made it impossible to ignore. There is a genuine strategic constraint here that requires honest acknowledgement. Presenting only one side of this situation would be the kind of analysis we criticize in other outlets, and this channel is not going to do that. The strongest counterargument is simple. Modern missile defense systems are not designed for total prevention. They are designed for risk reduction. No system, not even the most advanced layered architecture, claims 100% interception under all conditions, and historically, even during previous escalations, interception networks have prevented far greater damage than what would have occurred without them. Fair point. We report it. But here is what defense analysts at institutions like the International Institute for Strategic Studies, IISS, and former U.S. Missile Defense Agency advisors understand that critics of escalation narratives often overlook. Effectiveness is not measured only in interception percentage. It is measured in sustainability under repeated stress cycles. Yes, interception rates may remain high on paper. Yes, immediate catastrophic failure may be avoided. Yes, civilian protection systems do function under pressure, but that does not answer the deeper question, because even a system operating at 90% effectiveness becomes strategically unstable when the input volume increases fast enough that the remaining 10% accumulates faster than repair and reset cycles can stabilize. Surface level metric, interception success rate, deeper reality, system endurance under continuous saturation, and those are not the same thing. The question is not whether the system works in general. The question is whether it can continue working at this intensity over time under adaptation, and that answer is still unfolding in real time. So where does this leave us? Let me give you two clear paths because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1. Containment through controlled escalation. This is the managed scenario. For this path to hold, several things must happen in sequence. Immediate back-channel communication between regional powers through mediators like Oman, Qatar, or Switzerland. A temporary halt in long-range strike exchanges, not full peace, but enforced pause. Activation of deconfliction zones in air and missile tracking systems, reducing misinterpretation risk. External pressure from the United States, European Union, and Gulf states to freeze escalation cycles before retaliation becomes structural. If all of this happens, the system stabilizes into a tense equilibrium, not peace, but controlled hostility. No side fully wins, no side fully loses. But here is the condition that makes this difficult. Each additional strike reduces political space for de-escalation. Trust collapses faster than diplomacy can rebuild it. This path is possible, but it is narrowing. Path 2. Structural escalation, loop. This is the spiral, and this is not a collapse in the Hollywood sense. There are no explosions of a single decisive moment, no dramatic headline that ends everything. This is something slower, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily, irreversibly, like water eroding stone. Each retaliation becomes justification for the next. Each defense response becomes an offensive signal. Each interception failure, even partial, becomes political pressure for escalation. And years from now, a future generation will ask, how did they not see it coming? The answer will not be ignorance, it will be normalization. And there were analysts who warned about this exact pattern. Defense economists, regional security scholars, and intelligence advisors. But warnings do not compete well against real-time crisis narratives. I think we are closer to Path 2 than the headlines suggest. But I also thought that before previous escalation stabilized, and then one moment changed the trajectory entirely. And that is what makes this so unstable, because nothing about this is final until suddenly it is. Here is what I keep coming back to. The sky over Israel at 02:17 a.m. was not just a battlefield, it was a reflection of something older, the belief that complexity can be fully controlled if the technology is advanced enough. But that night, The system did not collapse in a single moment. It bent, it adapted, it absorbed, it continued functioning while being pushed beyond its original assumptions. And that is the more uncomfortable truth, because this was never just about missiles. It was about what happens when engineering confidence meets strategic volume. Think again about the defense layers: Iron Dome, David's Sling, Aero systems. They are not just machines. They are promises. Promises that distance equals protection, that interception equals safety, that reaction equals control. But in moments like this, promises become stress points, and stress points reveal structure. One defense official, quoted in past Pentagon missile defense assessments, once described these systems less like shields and more like filters under pressure. Filters, not walls, not invincibility. Filters that only work as long as what is coming through them remains within expected limits. That is the fire alarm analogy here. These systems are not symbols of dominance. They are fire alarms installed in buildings already exposed to risk, alarms that activate when pressure crosses thresholds that were mathematically assumed to be rare. And what we are seeing now is not destruction of those systems. It is exposure of their boundaries. The system was never permanently secure. It was temporarily cooperating with conditions that have now changed. So the question is no longer whether interception works. The question is, can any modern city, system, or defense architecture remain stable when the scale of threat stops respecting its assumptions? Or is stability itself just a temporary agreement between capability and restraint? If this analysis helped you understand what is actually unfolding beyond the headlines, share it with someone who still thinks this is just a regional escalation story. It is not. It is a live case study in how modern conflict, economics, and technology are now fused into a single system. And if you are watching this closely, there are 3 questions worth thinking about. Q1, strategic level. When saturation becomes a weapon, how do missile defense systems evolve without becoming economically unsustainable? Q2, accountability level. At what point do governments publicly admit that interception success is not the same as civilian safety, and who carries responsibility for that gap? Q3, universal level. Is technological security ever truly stable, or is it always temporary, dependent on conditions that can change faster than systems can adapt? If you found value in this breakdown, hit the like button. It helps this type of coverage reach more people who are trying to understand complex global events beyond surface reporting. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because developments like this do not move in weekly cycles anymore. They move in hours, and I do read every comment, not for noise, but for signal, for what people are noticing on the ground level that larger narratives sometimes miss. This channel exists for one reason: to follow stories that are real, consequential, and structurally important, even when they are uncomfortable to watch unfold. Stay sharp.